Hi everyone, patch 11.16 just came out, so let's take a look at it. In this video, I will review the patch, then look at how this will affect the current meta, and finally, I will finish off with a tier list of what the new meta will look like. First up, we have trait changes. Legionnaire is getting reworked. Now you get an attack speed plus healing based on damage dealt with every auto attack. Although this can lead to some problems due to how good this is with Draven, Riven, and Yasuo, I still like the change as it makes the synergy more interesting, and it also makes it worth to go for more than 2 Legionnaires in any comp. Abomination is getting nerfed. This makes it scale less with each stage, and it also gets some base nerfs as well. I think this is fine. It was very strong in the last patch, and this will definitely make less people force it. Cannoneer is getting a small nerf at 2-star. This is fine as both Lucian and Tristana were really strong on the last patch. Hellions is getting a small buff, which will make them a bit more attractive on stage 2, same story with 2 Rangers. Nightbringer 6 and 8 are getting nerfs. This will only affect the Yasuo comp. With Aphelios, you're rarely running more than 2 Nightbringers anyways. 3 Sentinels gets a deserved nerf. The synergy was too strong on stage 2, and lastly 6 Skirms is getting a buff, which is nice to see as you would never play 6 Skirmishers, besides maybe on stage 3 if you high rolled it. So we will see this get more play now, which is nice. Moving on to 1 costs. Leona and Vayne are getting small buffs. This might make Vayne more valuable in stage 2, but both of these don't really change anything. The Olaf nerf is really nice to see as the strongest opener in the game was the Sentinel Skirmisher opener, so we should probably see more viable openers now moving forward. Moving on to 2 costs, Irelia is getting a much deserved nerf. This champion is probably the best in the game, and this will still make her a god at tanking, but you lose some damage there, which is fine, and it takes her a bit longer to get to that max high resistance state. Tristana is getting nerfed at 2 and 3-star. This is fine as Hellion Tristana was a very strong comp. However, this is a relatively small nerf. With Hellions you already get a ton of attack speed, so it just pushes the comp down a little. But pair this with the Cannoneer nerf and it might actually hit her a bit harder than we think. Sejuani is getting nerfed again. I personally think they're hitting her a little too hard, but I guess that the Cavalier tag plus the Brawler tag plus her spell could make her unkillable in some cases. Set is getting a small buff, which is fine. This is a buff to Draconic, which is fine as that trait has not been bad, but it hasn't been great either. Thresh is getting a damage nerf, which is fine as the reason we play Thresh is for the CC and not for the damage. Varus gets a small buff, which is nice to see as he can probably be an Aphelios item carrier now. Moving on to 3 costs. There is a lot of text for Nocturne, but the TLDR is he's getting buffed at 1 and 2-star and nerfed at 3-star. This is fine as Nocturne sucks hard at 1-star and he's okay at 2-star. Lee Sin is getting a mana nerf at 3-star, which is okay considering you only 3-star him in the Yasuo comp, and Lee Sin did repeat cast a little too often with items. Lulu is getting a buff, which is nice. This helps compensate a little for the Tristana nerf, and it also makes her more attractive to run as a Mystic in the other comps as well. Riven and Yasuo are getting nerfed to compensate for the Legionnaire rework. This should make them relatively power neutral at all levels, as you don't need healing items for them anymore. Moving on to 4 costs, Galio is getting a decent buff. This is a bit concerning though, as the Sentinel Lucian comp did great on the previous patch, and now it will only get stronger. Karma is getting a deserved buff. She was the worst 4 cost on the previous patch. The numbers look small, but with how consistently she is attacking, it is actually a decent buff. Lucian is getting a buff and a nerf. Now Titans, Hurricane, Shiv, and Rageblade work on him. Not sure if any of these will be great on him, but the best part is now you can more freely pivot in and out of Lucian, as you can slam these items in the early game, and they will actually be valuable on him in the late game. The HP nerf makes him a bit more squishy, but with the big Sentinel shields, this won't affect him too much. It's more so the Cannoneer nerf that hurts them the most. Ivern is getting nerfed. This further nerfs the Abomination comp even more, and Drell is getting a small nerf. She will cast a little less often now, which is fine. Moving on to 5 costs. Akshan 1 and 2-star are getting buffed. This gives them a bit more attack speed, which lets them repeat cast a bit quicker, so it's actually a considerable buff. Garen is also getting a nice buff at 2-star, which lets them deal more damage, and he also gets to cast a bit quicker as well. Gwen is shredding a bit more resistances now. This will not matter unless you're running Gwen carry, so that could take off in the next patch. Heimer 1-star is getting nerfed, which is nice to see. The A-Bomb Heimer comp stabilized way too hard off of a 1-star Heimerdinger. And Volibear 1-star is getting nerfed. Yet again, another hit to the A-Bomb comp. and this paired with the Ivern nerf brings down the Revenant frontline altogether. Moving on to items, QSS is getting a buff. This item was built on no one but Jax, and I don't see that changing with this buff. Deathcap is getting buffed, which is Karma's best item, so she gets stronger as well. Redemption gets a nerf. This item was insane on Irelia and the Monstrosity, and both of those were great on the last patch. Sunfire gets a nerf. This will make the burn do the same amount of damage as long as your tank with the item is staying alive. So this will make Sunfire about the same power level in the early game, but even worse in the late game now. Moving on to Radiant items. Blue buff, Stoneplate, and Giant Slayer are getting buffed, which is nice, as those were weak and rarely used on anyone. Guinsoo's Rageblade is getting a bonus attack speed at the start of the fight. This is great on Lucian now, and is also really good on Aphelios. Ionic Spark gets a nerf, and this will make it worse on the A-Bomb, and a lot worse in other comps as well. Jewel Gauntlet and Deathcap gets a small buff, which is nice for the AP carries. Locket gets a buff. This is good for comps that run a lot of melee carries, like Skirmishers or Yasuo. Redemption is getting a nerf. This item was insanely good on the A-Bomb, so another nerf to that comp there. Shiv is getting a nice buff, and Sunfire gets another nerf. There are also some bug fixes, so pause the video if you want to read through them. Now in order to see how the meta will change, we have to see what the meta was on patch 11.15. We saw Hellion Triss doing really well, alongside Lucian, Yasuo, Riven, and A-Bomb. All of these comps got nerfs, but the A-Bomb comp and Tristana comp got nerfed the hardest. Both of these led to a relatively slow-paced meta, since both of them lost streaked on stage 2 and most of stage 3, we will definitely see the meta speed up a little bit. It all comes down to how good the new Legionnaire trait is. If it's really good, we can end up with a very high tempo meta where people are playing a lot of Yasuo, Riven, and Draven carry. People might be rolling aggressively at level 6 on stage 3-2 in order to find Rivens and Yasuo, and they will definitely roll hard at level 7 to 2-star them if not 3-star them. In addition, frontline units that provide CC like Lee Sin, Ivern, Rel, and Volibear got nerfed, and this will make melee carries have an easier time. So we might see Jax rise to power as well with a 6 Skirmisher buff. But if the Legionnaire trait ends up being bad, we will probably see a resurgence of the forecast carry meta, where Lucian, Aphelios, Karma, Vel'Koz, and Jax are good. So let's take a look at the tier list for the new patch. All of these are predictions based on the patch notes. Sometimes I'm a bit off, but most of the time I'm relatively accurate. I think the nerfs to Lucian were not large enough, and with his itemization being more flexible now, you can slam a lot more items in the early game and have an easier path to the end game Lucian board. I think Jax will do very well with all the big CC frontliners getting nerfed. In A tier, I have Karma. How well she does depends a lot on the Legionnaire rework. She has a hard time against units that can heal up from her consistent DPS. However, with the buffs to her, Garen, and a few AP items, I have confidence you can play Karma and do well next patch. Vel'Koz was not the worst last patch, but with the AP item buffs, he will be better next patch. Riven and Yasuo are hard to place as they did get nerfed, but yet again, it all comes down to how the Legionnaire rework ends up affecting them. The fact that they don't have to build healing items now is really powerful, as you get a quote-unquote 4th item now, so they could be anywhere from S tier to B tier. Nocturne is really good into comps like Karma, Lucian, and Aphelios, as they have a hard time dealing with assassins, but he's not too good into comps that use melee carries. The buffs to the 1 and 2 star versions sound good, and will probably make him stronger as you have an easier path to the 3 star. Aphelios is very much a 1st or 8th kind of comp. The 4 Ranger version can let you top 4 sometimes, but the 2 Ranger version got nerfed as you often run Rel, Ivern, and Volibear in that one. In B tier we have A-Bomb, which got nerfed in a bunch of different places. If it's C tier next patch, I wouldn't even be surprised. Hellion Triss got nerfed relatively hard, and with a faster paced meta, people have less time to hit the 3 stars for that comp. Draven was pretty bad last patch, and the only buff that he saw was the Legionnaire change, but I'm not sure that that's enough to put it into A tier or S tier. Thank you so much for watching. If you learned something, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Comment down below what video you want me to make next, and if you want to get better at TFT, join the Discord. We got over 3,000 other players there who are hungry to climb. And if you want to get coached by me, the information is over on the Discord server as well. So take care, and see you in the next video.